welcome to this segment of the 2022 Virtual NIL Awards brought to you by Blank Rome. And I'm joined today with Mr. Cody Wilcoxson, and he is an attorney at Blank Rome. And so instead of me fumbling through what Blank Rome is and how they can help you with all of your legal affairs, I'm going to give him the mic for 30 seconds and let him explain exactly what Blank Rome can do for you.
Thank you so much, Danita. We're thrilled to work with you on this seminar. Blank Rome is a law firm, national-based law firm with about 650 attorneys across the country. Specifically to the NIL space, we have been working with universities on providing educational resources to help student athletes make the best decisions in entering NIL deals. And we also have been working with some of the marketplaces and brands as they start to wade into the NIL space and make sure they're putting together good agreements, complying with state laws, conference and institutional policies, the NCAA policy, of course, and making sure they're entering into agreements with athletes to put the athletes and the brands in the best position and not jeopardize anybody's eligibility, not take away any inappropriate rights. So we're just making sure everyone is acting safely and smartly within the NIL marketplace.
Well, that sounds definitely like something that everyone needs, not just in the NIL space, but if you have a business, you need legal representation to make sure you're entering in the contracts correctly, et cetera, et cetera. So what makes Blank Rome unique from other big firms? Because I heard you say you have 650, that's a lot, nationwide. So whether you're in California, which I know you personally were the other week, or in Pennsylvania, which is where you are now, to New York, all the way down, I'm sure, to Florida and in between, you guys have a lot of territory you cover. What makes you all different from, let's say, maybe a boutique firm that's catering to NIL space?
Yeah, one of the things that makes Blank Rome really unique in this space is that we are a full service national firm. So we have, an award-winning intellectual property group all over the country and litigators and mergers and transactions and corporate formation attorneys. And, we even have maritime and matrimonial attorneys that, can deal with family issues and international issues and all sorts of things. And I combine those two groups together, which is funny because they have nothing to do with each other. But we have attorneys that do sort of everything and anything. So when you hire a Blank Rome attorney, you hire me, who by trade is a litigator and someone that deals with fighting about terms in a contract. You are hiring the brain power of all 650 attorneys at Blank Rome and getting the resources. So when I'm working on an NIL project, I am pulling in the knowledge of our deal makers and our intellectual property group to make sure all of that is situated. And so and not just one attorney, you're hiring all the attorneys and all the resources of the firm. And since we have the ability to work in all sorts of groups, if you have an issue that pops up related to, you want to start an LLC to kind of reduce your liability because you're going to give lessons or you're going to run a camp, we have ability to have someone come in, help you work on getting those papers filed with the Secretary of State, getting that all up and running and making sure you're taking care of yourself. So we are full service, top to bottom, and can kind of take care of someone's needs. And we also bring that perspective into each project that we're working on.
Well, I don't think that marriage is too far off because sometimes you see the collegiate athletes getting engaged, very young in college sports. So they might need help with that. But I mean, that's a lot that you guys do. And so from that, I don't want people to feel intimidated about the process. I think people feel intimidated when they hear attorneys because of attorneys' fees. So what would it take to work with? Do you have different brackets of working with NIL because they're collegiate students as opposed to working with a more established client? How does that work to help break down some of that fear that they might have?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've really been trying to do is partner with universities and institutions so that we can provide our resources to athletes across the board. So we're not going in and specifically looking at the terms of your specific NIL deal, but we're giving you educational resources that give you, larger concepts, take home, papers and things like that coming out of our seminars where these are the things I need to look for these are red flags when I'm looking at an NIL agreement that's presented to me, that if I see this, I need to talk to someone in my athletic department. I need to talk to an attorney. I need to talk to an agent or a business manager or a family member with a little more experience in this that you have as a college student prior to entering into that agreement. So we want to make sure student athletes have the tools to review these agreements and make smart decisions and know when they need to ask for help. Know when it's worth a couple $100s to have an attorney look at their contract.
Right. I think that's fantastic because it does give a very much of an entry point then for them to not feel so intimidated and say, oh my gosh, I need an attorney. That's going to cost me thousands of dollars that I don't have. And that information is readily available for them to take home and, like you say, utilize, and then say, maybe this is a bit out of my stretch. So let me pick up the phone and call Blank Rome. Let me call Cody and find out how to better navigate this. At still an affordable cost as well. So that's fantastic for you potential NIL business owners, student athletes that are out there. So what makes the NIL experience for legal pitfalls?
Yeah, so there's just a lot of unknown. Obviously, NIL is a concept, and now it's become very associated with college athletes, but name, image, and likeness is a concept we've been dealing with for, decades in the United States. Many states have NIL laws. There is no federal, right of publicity at the moment. So it's making sure student athletes know what that entails. It's not just your picture. It's not just your name. Examples of really famous NIL are like the number 23 on a red and black basketball jersey. Right. Every single person knows what that means, even if it's just a number and a color scheme. That is a protectable likeness. It would be a number 2 on a white pinstripe baseball jersey. It's the same concept. So knowing that you have these things and they're protectable also allows you to know when to give permission and when to not give permission. So when athletes are trying to commercialize their name, image, and likeness, the big pitfall that we're concerned about is the contract. And for us, that means the student athlete taking the time and really taking ownership over reviewing that agreement. And we like to put it into 5 buckets of things that a student athlete should look for. So the first one is, what are the rights you are allowing them to use? Can they use your name? Can they use pictures of you? Are you going to do a photo shoot with them where they can use those pictures? Can they use your likeness? What are the things you are giving up? That's the first big thing. And every student athlete needs to know exactly what it is the contract is asking them to give up. The second thing is, what is the things that you're giving up? What are they allowed to do with it? So we talk a lot about context. If it is a sports drink company, they can have a picture of you drinking that drink and use it in certain ways, but are they allowed to modify your image? Can they Photoshop it? Mm-hmm. Those are things we are concerned about, and those are things that, by and large, you shouldn't be allowing brands to do. They shouldn't be able to modify your image without your permission. Then sort of the third bucket is, what is the time commitment? What are they asking you to do? Student athletes are incredibly busy people. You not only have your commitment to your team and your training, both what's required, and most student athletes are very driven people. They're in the gym extra. They're doing all sorts of things. They also have their schoolwork, right? You're attending class. You're doing your homework. You're doing projects. You're doing assignments. You're also a college student, so you're socializing. You have friends. You're doing all those things. You need to make sure you can balance all of those commitments together. So you need to make sure the time commitment that's being requested of you is reasonable. You can't infringe on any of your required activities, certainly any practices or games or team meetings. You can't miss to do NIL work. You also can't miss class, right? So make sure you're knowing what commitment is and what they're requiring you to do. The fourth bucket that we put is, what are you getting in return, right? So the basic one is cash, right? You're getting cash compensation. You're going to be an independent contractor. You're going to have to pay taxes on that money. They're not withholding taxes for you. So as soon as you get that paycheck, you need to set aside some of that for Uncle Sam. If you're getting merchandise or you're getting a car, those are very popular deals right now. you are going to pay taxes on the value of those items that you're receiving, even though you're not getting the cash. So if you get a car for 6 months, this has been a very popular NIL agreement with football and basketball players, is you get a new car to drive for 6 months. Well, at the end of the year, that car dealership is going to put a value of what a lease for 6 months would have been, and you're going to get a 1099 form to you that says you received this amount of money, even though all you did was get the keys to a car, and you're going to have to pay taxes on that amount. So making sure you're understanding getting in return. And then the final thing, and one of the most important things, is do you understand how you can get out of this deal? If something goes wrong, do you have the right to terminate that agreement, whether you've done the work or not, right? If you get out at the very beginning and they haven't paid you anything, is that acceptable? Or if you've done half of the work, or if it's a 3 social media post agreement and you've made 2 of the posts, but something happens and you want to get out of the agreement, can you? Even if you have to give back some of the money, you need to make sure you have the right to terminate, even if that's with in writing, even if that means giving back some of the money. You want to have those rights. You also want to know how you can enforce your side of the contract. So we look for things like choice of law or jurisdictional things that says, hey, you have to sue in this forum. So if you are a student athlete and sitting in Pennsylvania where I am, and you sign an agreement with a Florida-based company and it says you can only sue us in the state of Florida, well, that's really difficult, right? You're sitting in Pennsylvania, you're a 21-year-old student, you need to hire a Florida attorney to file a lawsuit in Florida court. You'll have to travel to Florida to, attend hearings, and they can compel you to do depositions there. And it just makes it very difficult to enforce those rights. So you want to make sure that you have the right to sue in the state you are sitting in and working in and providing the value to the man. We also talk about things like arbitration clauses, but those are kind of the 5 key things: is what are the rights you're giving up? What can the brand do with your name, image, and likeness? What is the time commitment? What are they asking you to do specifically? What are you getting in return? And how can you get out of the deal? Those are the 5 pitfalls. And if you understand that, you are in a good place.
Yes, you are in a very good place. I think because sometimes the student athlete can be on the shy side, especially, and having those enforcement, right? Those boundaries that are established are really good. But also bringing back to my first question, which was, what makes you unique? I think that's part of what makes you unique, is the fact that if you are having to sue someone in Florida, but you're in currently Pennsylvania, that it's a phone call, right, for you and your team, as opposed to if you're working maybe with a smaller boutique firm, then you're going to have to find someone in Florida that you can, vet, and they may or may not know someone, your local person that is handling your case. Which brings me to the question of, so how does that work with residency, where their college residency is versus their home residency?
Yeah, for us, I think we would advise student athletes that you want to be able to enforce your rights where you're going to school, because that's where you're going to be spending a majority of your time. That's where you're going to be making these posts by and large. Sure, if you're home in California over the holidays and you're making some social media posts, yes, you're doing it there, but really the value you're generating, the hard work you've done as a student athlete, where you're spending 9 or 10 months of each calendar year is where you're going to school. So that's where it's going to be easiest for you to enforce your rights. If that's something you wanted, you said, I am a California resident, I really want the ability to be able to enforce this agreement in California, you could ask for that. I think that would be an unusual situation. We typically push for it to be where you are attending school. That's where the agreement is really happening. That's where the performance of the agreement is happening, and that's where it makes the most sense for both sides to litigate. I know companies always want to litigate at home, which in the scenario we're talking about is Florida. But in these cases, when you're talking about student athletes, the right thing is to litigate that where you're asking the student athlete to perform the contract.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So take us through the process of working with your firm.
Sure. So, so we go in and we would speak to the universities, and part of our offering to universities is some follow-up time and access to attorneys for a period of time after the fact because, as you can imagine, student athletes sitting in an auditorium or in a conference are less likely to raise their hand and ask questions. So if they say, hey, we listened to this attorney talk and it gave, we were wondering about this, or we're kind of dealing with this issue and we want to know more about it generally, they give us a call, and when we start to talk through, they explain to us kind of what the issues is. We find the right person within the firm that has that expertise and start getting answered those questions. Specific to your question about a student athlete, we typically don't work directly with the student athletes. We work more with the universities. But if a student athlete were to approach us and say, hey, I want to run these camps, or I'm going to give lessons, and I want to protect my personal liability, shield my personal liability, what we would do is we would sit down with them and talk about kind of what their budget is, what they're imagining this looking like, what type of protections they're looking for, how they intend to sort of run this business. And we would put together corporate formation documents with them, an operating agreement, and making sure they're getting their business set up correctly, because the major pitfall is you can set up an LLC, but if you just run it then as Cody Wilcoxson and you're not running it as a business, it's just you, well, you're actually not then protected because you have not run a business. You have just run it as your person, even though you filed these papers. So we want to make sure the student athlete understands that they need to separate, they need to run this as a business to be able to have the benefit of the protections and the decrease of liability, because unfortunately, in the litigious society we live in, if you are a college basketball player and you're running a basketball camp back home over the holidays with 25 young people and someone gets hurt, you don't want to find yourself on the end of a large lawsuit, personally.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in and a lot of information. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place to obviously find us and find all of my contact information at blankrome.com. You can see all of our attorney profiles. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter at @CWilcoxson, where I'm posting, NIL and other sports law related content. Also my own just personal musings as well. So we are accessible. My direct line and my direct email is available on the website. So if people have questions, they want to reach out, they want to start a conversation. If you're a business looking to wade into the NIL space and you don't know exactly what you want to do, you don't have a contract, you don't have in-house attorneys that you're working with, we're happy to guide and counsel you in entering in that space, because there is a great opportunity. Student athletes are going to be the greatest influencers in the marketplace. They're engaging, they're great, driven young people that care about these products and want to work with these businesses. And they're so excited to be able to use these rights and make some money. And I think every business would be well suited to work with student athletes to promote their products.
Thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate all the great legal information that you gave us. I look forward to seeing more of what you all are doing with universities. Again, if you have a business or you want a business and you need someone to reach out to for legal questions and help, you can contact Cody at blankrome. That's blankrome.com, BLANKROME.com. And we thank you for your participation in this particular segment.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here.